Hello crocheters, welcome to my class. Today we're going to be making this fun little hooker pillow because as you all know, we use a lot of crochet hooks in crochet, and at the end of the day, we're all hookers. I'd love to tell you a little bit about me before we get started. My name is Callie Holly. I'm the designer and owner of Crochet It Ain't So, and I specialize in designing crochet pillow patterns. Most of them have some curse words on them or have a pop culture reference because I'm really working to break the stigma that crochet has to be for the older generation. A lot of young people are coming into the crochet world and it's becoming a really fun craft for people to try during quarantine. So I wanted to give them a little bit something fun that they could put on their couch or show their friends to kind of make crochet cool again. Also, I have the mouth of a sailor in normal life, and that's also part of my sense of humor, which is why I make those. So I hope you'll join me in making this hooker pillow. It's a beginner-friendly pattern, and it also only requires 2 stitches, which we'll teach in this class. The pillow itself is worked in a front panel with the words and a back panel, and that we'll stitch together, and then we'll stuff this full of polyfill. So it doesn't really matter what size it comes out as long as your stitches are nice and tight together so the stuffing doesn't show through. Other than that, it's pretty universal and can be done any way you want and any color you want as well. So let's get started. So for this project, we are going to only need 1 skein of yarn. I like Big Twist, and it's about 347 meters is what you're going to use. And we're going to use a 5mm hook. In the pattern, it says a 5.5mm hook. It's your preference, but this is the hook I'm using today, a 5mm. We're going to go ahead and start with a chain of 66. So we'll start with that chain, and then we're going to do a single crochet starting in the 2nd chain from the hook all the way across the row. We're going to end up doing 5 rows of single crochet before we start our bobble stitches. But for single crochet, just a reminder, you insert your hook into the stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, and pull through 2 loops on the hook. So we'll be doing a lot of single crochets throughout this whole pattern. So you'll continue like this all the way across the row, ending with a single crochet in the very last stitch. So at the end of this row and every single row beyond this, we will end up with 65 stitches on the hook. So we chained 66, we single crocheted starting in the 2nd chain from the hook, which makes it 65. So you always want to make sure you're counting 65 in every single row. That will keep your front panel and your back panel very, very straight. So after we're done with this row, we're going to snap our fingers and boom, there's our first row of single crochet. Now we're going to chain 1, turn our work, and then in every stitch across the row, we're going to go ahead and single crochet again. The chain 1 does not count as a stitch for this pattern. So you'll continue to single crochet across the row, and we're going to be making 4 more rows of single crochet. So 5 total rows of single crochet to get this started. So we'll continue our single crochet across, inserting, pulling up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, and we're going to do 4 more of those to make it look like this. So there's 5 rows of single crochet. Now we're going to start a bobble stitch row. So we're going to start with 4 single crochets, and we're going to do our first bobble. Now these patterns, I work my patterns starting from the top right corner down. So we're starting in the very top of our R. We're going to yarn over, insert into the stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2. So now we have 2 loops on the hook. We're going to yarn over, insert into the stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 more. Now we'll have 3 loops on the hook. Yarn over, insert into the same stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 more. Now we'll have 4 loops on the hook, and our last one, yarn over, insert into the stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops. And sometimes you have to wiggle it to get through. And then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 loops on the hook, yarn over, pull through all 5 loops on the hook. That is a bobble stitch. Now what we're going to do is single crochet into the next stitch, and that's going to make our bobble poof up to create that little bump that the words are going to be created. So there's our first bobble stitch. Now for the top of our R, we're going to work this all the way across. So for the top of our R, we have 3 bobbles in a row. So our next stitch is going to be another bobble stitch. And I like my bobbles to have 5 loops on the hook before I pull my yarn through. You can do bobbles larger, you can do bobbles smaller. This just works really well for the size 4 yarn. Now we're going to single crochet again after that bobble and one more bobble here. So that's the top of our R. Pull through. Now we're going to work 3 single crochets in the next 3 stitches. 1. So there's the top of our R. So that's our first single crochet we just made. We're going to make 2 more. And now we're going to create 4 bobble stitches with single crochets in between. So here's 1 bobble, and this is the top of our E. Single crochet after this bobble, another bobble stitch, another single crochet after this bobble, another bobble stitch, single crochet after this bobble, and we'll single crochet to seal that up. So that's the top of our E. There's the 4 on the top of our E. Now we're going to work 3 single crochets. So we've already done 1, so there's 2, and there's 3, and now we're going to work 1 bobble. This is going to be the top of our K, the top corner of our K. And as you know, a K splits into 2 parts, so this is the top little corner, and we'll work into the sort of post of the K in a minute. So then we'll do 4 single crochet, and then another bobble stitch, and here's the top of our K that's just been created. Okay, now we're going to do 5 single crochets, so we've already done 1, so we'll do 4 more. 2, 3, 4. And now we're going to do the top of an O here. So we have 3 bobble stitches that we have to do with single crochets in between each one. So here's our first bobble stitch. Single crochet, another bobble stitch, single crochet, another bobble stitch, and then another single crochet, and that closes off the top of that O. Now we're going to work 6 more single crochets, which actually is going to be a total of 7 in between our top of our O's. So there's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and we'll repeat the process we just did for this last O. So we're going to do 3 bobble stitches with single crochets in between each one. Now, one thing I want to just mention here is it's really important that we keep our tension very even for the pillows and our stitches nice and tight. And the reason for that is we are going to stuff this pillow with polyfill instead of a pillow form. And so in order to do that, we have to keep our stitches tight so the polyfill doesn't pop out and it doesn't show through. So just something to keep in mind as you're working through, keep your tension as even as you can and keep your stitches nice and tight, but not so tight that you can't pull your hook through. So really kind of play around with what feels comfortable and you can move quickly through the pattern. Last bobble stitch for the top of this O here. Single crochet. And we'll do 5 total single crochets here. And then the last time we're going to do our bobbles is going to be for the top of our H. So after we do our 5 single crochets, we'll do a bobble. Five single crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Another bobble stitch. Then we're going to do 1, 2, 3 single crochets to finish off our row. And that's it, you've done your first row of bobble stitches. So now what we do is we're going to chain 1 and we turn our work. But here's what it looks like so far. Almost like Morse code in a way. So now what we're going to do is when we turn our work, we're going to work a single crochet into every stitch across the row. You'll notice that the bobble stitches have a little bit more of an elongated stitch top. That counts as 1 stitch. Again, if you want to make sure your rows are straight while you're first starting out with this pillow, you want to ensure you're counting 65 stitches across the row. So we'll stitch in every single stitch across the row, including our bobble stitches, just like that. And it's kind of fun and easy to remember. If you see an elongated stitch from your bobble stitch, remember that there's 2 single crochets on either side. So snap your fingers and boom, single crochet row done. Now we're going to go ahead and do our next row of bobble stitch. And this would be row 8 in the pattern that we're working on now. We'll single crochet into the first 3 stitches like always. 1, 2, 3. And now we're going to bobble. Now in the pattern there is a chart included so you can really see where you're placing your bobbles. It should be helpful for you in navigating where you are in the pattern. Then we're going to single crochet 4 times. And then we'll bobble here on the next stitch. And you'll see I flip my work over like that a lot. I want to make sure I'm putting the bobble in the right place. And your bobble stitch should line up directly under your previous bobble stitch for some, and other ones you want to work in front of or behind depending on what the pattern looks like. So that's why you'll see me eye it every once in a while by flipping it over. Okay, now we're going to single crochet 9 times and we're going to make it all the way back to the edge of the E. So we're going to do a long single crochet row here. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It's 9. I must have miscounted just now. But anyway, it's 9. Now we're going to go ahead and bobble again. And remember, we're working now the spine of the E. Now we're going to single crochet 4 times and work our way over to our K. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we'll do a bobble stitch here. And then 3 single crochet. And then a bobble at the spine of our K. Now we'll single crochet 4 times. 3, 4. And we'll bobble stitch here. Now we'll do 5 single crochet. And then we'll bobble again. And see, I went over one and I looked at my work and said, oh, I went too far. So I pulled out, frogged that let stitch, and then went ahead and bobbled. So that's important for you guys to see as well. It's very forgivable. You can frog your work and come back if you end up misplacing your bobble. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and single crochet 5. And bobble. Single crochet 5. Now we're going to single crochet 4, heading over to our H. Bobble. Single crochet 5 after this. Bobble. And then single crochet in the last 3 stitches, and then we'll chain 1 and turn our work. And here's what that row looks like. So you can start to see our letters even starting to form. So we'll do the same thing, chain our work and do a single crochet row across. Now we're working on row 10. So row 9 was our single crochet row, row 10, we're starting now. 3 single crochets. And then bobble. Four single crochets. And then bobble. Then we're going to do 9 single crochets. Bobble. And we're going to do 5 single crochets. then bobble, and then 2 more single crochets after this. Bobble, and then 2 single crochets, 1, 2, and then we'll bobble again. Then we'll do 3 single crochets. Then bobble. Then we'll do 7 single crochets. And this is inside of an O here. So we're working on the interior of our first O. Then bobble. Then we'll do 3 single crochets. Then another bobble there, and that's the second O that we're starting. Then we're going to do 7 single crochets for the inside of our next O. Bobble. Three single crochets. The first post of our H here, we'll do another bobble. Then on the inside of our H here, we crochet 5. Two, 3, 4, 5, and then our last bobble of this row. Then we'll single crochet 3 all the way to the end of the row. And then we'll chain 1 and turn our work. So here's what it looks like so far. We're really getting there. You can start to see it. We're going to single crochet our next row. And here it is so far. Now we're working on row 12. So we're going to go ahead and start with 4 single crochets for the start of row 12. Then bobble. Then we'll do 3 single crochets. Then bobble. Then we'll do 9 single crochets to get us to the spine of our E. Let's say you wanted to change colors, by the way, in your bobbles. What you would do is you would actually institute a color change right before you bobble stitch. You would do the bobble in a new color, then you would change back to your single crochet color right after your bobble. We're not going to do that for this pattern, but if you are familiar with changing colors, it's that same technique. And then we'll go ahead and bobble here. Six single crochet. Bobble. And just one single crochet here, then we'll jump right into another bobble. We're at the center point of our K, is what we're working on right now. Then you're going to do 3 single crochets, then bobble, seven single crochets, then bobble, three single crochets, then bobble, then 7 single crochets, then another bobble, then 3 single crochets, and then another bobble. Almost done with this row already. Then we're going to do 5 single crochets, then another bobble, and the final 3 single crochets from this row. Then we'll chain 1, turn our work, and work our single crochet row next in every stitch across. All right, that's what it's looking like so far. It's starting to look like a hooker. All right, now we're working on row 14. So now we're going to go ahead and start with 6 single crochets in the first 6 stitches. Then we're going to work a bobble stitch. then single crochet, and right away another bobble stitch. Okay, we're going to work 7 single crochets now. And now we're going to work a bobble stitch. A single crochet, and another bobble stitch right away. Now we're going to single crochet 5. Then bobble. Then 2 single crochet. Bobble. Then 3 single crochet. Bobble. Seven single crochet. Bobble. Then 3 single crochet. Bobble. Then 7 single crochet. Then a bobble stitch. Then 3 more single crochet. Then a bobble stitch again. Five single crochet. Last bobble of this row. And the final 3 single crochet. Then chain 1 and turn our work. And then again, we're going to do our standard single crochet all the way across. All right, so here we are. We're going to start working on row 16. So we're going to start row 16 with 5 single crochets. Then bobble. Two single crochets. Bobble. Nine single crochets, working toward the spine of our E. Bobble stitch. Four single crochets. Bobble stitch. Three single crochets. Bobble stitch. Three more single crochets. Bobble. Seven single crochets. Bobble. Three single crochets. Bobble. Seven single crochets. Bobble. Then three single crochets. And now we're going to work, after this last single crochet here, we're going to work across the H. So we're going to do some bobbles back to back here with single crochets in between. So we're going to do a bobble stitch. Single crochet. Bobble stitch. Single crochet. Bobble stitch. Single crochet. and finally bobble stitch. And the final 3 single crochets in this row. Chain 1 and turn our work, and as always we're going to work our single crochet row next. All right, now we're going to be working our row 18, so we're getting close to being done with the front panel. So we're going to go ahead and start row 18 with a single crochet of 4, then bobble, that's a fun part about a bobble, is if you have to frog it just right, you can actually get your hook back in all of them. 3 single crochets, we already did 1, so there's 2, 3, bobble, nine single crochets, okay, bobble stitch, then single crochet 3, bobble stitch, single crochet 4, bobble stitch, single crochet 4 more, bobble stitch, single crochet 5, bobble, single crochet 4, oh sorry, 5, single crochet 5. Clearly was having a hard time during this particular stretch. Go ahead and bobble. Single crochet 5. Bobble. Single crochet 4 times. bobble, single crochet 5, bobble, and single crochet into the last 3 stitches of the row. Then chain 1 and turn our work. And then again, we're going to do our final single crochet row in between our rows here. And then we're going to get started with the last row of this front panel of bobbles, and we're going to do row 20. All right, so we're going to start with 3 single crochets. Bobble, four single crochets, bobble, three single crochets, and now we're going to work the very bottom of our E. So bobble, single crochet, bobble, single crochet, bobble, single crochet, and last bobble. Okay, then we're going to do 2 single crochets, 2, then we'll bobble, 5 single crochets, bobble, five single crochets, two, 3, 4, and now we're going to work the bottom of our O, 5. So we're going to do 3 bobble single crochets together. So bobble, single crochet, bobble, single crochet, and last bobble of this little O, bobble, now we're going to single crochet 7 times, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then we're going to work the bottom of our next row. So we're going to bobble, single crochet, bobble, single crochet, and finally bobble, then we're going to single crochet 5 times, bobble, single crochet 5 times, bobble, single crochet 3 times, chain 1, and we'll turn our work. So look at that, you have made all of the bobble stitches. So there's your hooker so far. So what we're going to do now is we're going to work 5 single crochet rows at the very end. So just like we started, we're going to end with 5. So there's what it looks like, and there's your front panel. Now what we're going to do is we're going to tie off our work. So we're going to go ahead and snip our yarn and pull that loop through. And that is what our front panel looks like. So now what we're going to do after we make our front panel is we're going to work a back panel. So same exact size, using just single crochet stitches, we're going to work a back panel next. So we're going to go ahead and start our back panel the same way we started our front, with a chain of 66. And then starting in the second chain from the hook, we're going to single crochet. And in every stitch across the row, we're going to single crochet. So it should feel very familiar. We just did this to start the front panel. And the back panels work the exact same way. The only difference is it doesn't have bobble stitches. Now, if you wanted to get really funky and do a double-sided pillow where hooker is on either side, you could just recreate the same front panel. You could do that 2 times and stitch them together, which we'll show you how to do next. But for this purpose, we're going to make a plain back panel in the same color we worked our front panel. And so again, we're just doing single crochets in every stitch all the way across the row. So we'll just snap our fingers and there we go. So we have our front panel and our back panel. Now do not tie off from your back panel when you're all done. We're actually going to continue that stitch so that we can connect the front panel to the back panel. So what we're going to do is we're going to line up our front and back panels, and we're going to work stitches into each stitch from each side. So we're going to bring our hook into the stitch we just worked, into that final single crochet we just worked, and we're going to find the front panel and plug that into that first corner from the front panel. And then we're going to do a single crochet stitch. So we're going to pull our yarn through both stitches, single crochet. And we're going to continue this all the way across the row, working into the front and back panels together. And so if it's easier, you can work into the back and then check where the front is, but sometimes you end up getting it where it works by feel, especially if your stitches are super consistent. It feels really easy to plug it through both stitches. Now, what's really important is you do want to make sure you're hitting every single stitch on both sides. And the reason for that is because you want the pillow panels to line up exactly. So you should have the same amount of stitches in the front and back panel, both in rows and also in stitch counts. So this is where it's important that you match those up so that it stays really straight across. You don't want to skip any stitches so it gets bunchy, or you end up with fewer stitches on one side than the other when you get to the end. There's some other options here for you to do. So if you are more inclined to do any stitching with actual like needle and thread, you could stitch your panels together if you prefer. You could do a mattress stitch or a whip stitch or anything that makes the most sense to you. I like stitching them together because I like having a single crochet border around my pillow. Other options here is you could even do the border in a different color. So if you wanted to do your border in, let's say, a white or a cream color, then you would tie off your back panel, you would attach a new color, and you would stitch across the edging with your new color. Totally up to you. I like doing it in the same color just to create a really seamless look, but I have done it both ways and it looks really nice with a new color as well. So this is what we continue to do all the way across. So I'm going to skip ahead. So if you want to pause here until you get to this point, I'm going to skip ahead to along the sides of the pillow so you can see how to match up the sides. So here we are getting to the end of our top of our row here, and we'll continue all the way across. And you can see how my stitches line up exactly. I'm ending with the same last stitch on both sides. Now in the corners, it's really important that we create a corner. So what we're going to do is work 4 single crochets into that corner stitch. So I work 2, then I turn my work and I work 2 more into the same stitch. And what that does is it creates more of a square corner versus a rounded corner, and it creates an actual pillow shape. Again, options here. If you prefer doing corners a different way, you're welcome to do that. I just like to do 4 single crochets into the corners of my pillows. Now here we go on the sides. Now this is not as straightforward when it comes to lining up stitches as your top and bottom rows. And the reason for that is because we're working row to row versus stitch to stitch. But you will find a little opening here, and you'll find where those natural rows end and begin. And so again, in every single row, you're going to do a single crochet to bind them together all the way across and down. And again, this helps create a really seamless edge as well, because as we know, crochet edging doesn't tend to be super straight across. It can be a little bit bumpy, and this would hide any imperfections you may have had throughout your pillow. And so we'll continue this all the way around. Keep stitching in every single row, trying not to miss any, and making sure that your panels are lining up exactly. And I like to check throughout. So you'll see I just pulled the fabric there to make sure it was working. I like to double check and make sure as I'm going I'm not skipping anything, and that allows me to go ahead and line up my panels so nothing gets kind of wonky. And you shouldn't really be fighting it. It should be pretty natural and easy for you to put your hook through both of those rows. If it seems really difficult for some reason, you're probably not in a row. So you really want to look for those appropriate holes for the rows and actually stitch into those versus into a stitch. You want to stitch where the row naturally meets, those lines that you can see there. Another reason I like stitching my edges is because I only need a hook and yarn. I don't need anything else for this whole project, and except for obviously if I'm stuffing it, but it's a really good on-the-go project because I don't need any other materials other than a hook and yarn. Scissors, or you can, be a little bit rough with it and just rip your yarn if you need to, if you're in a pinch. Now here we are in the corner again. We're gonna work our 4 stitches into our corner. 2, and then I like to turn my work. 3, 4, and then here we go along the bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and skip this portion. Again, you can watch the first portion of this and just rewind, but it's the same exact concept, just finding every single stitch across the row and stitching into it because I really want to get into when I stop stitching and start stuffing the pillow and then how I finish the stitching. So we're going to jump ahead to that portion. Okay, so once we get into our final side, I like to stitch about halfway, or if I end on a long side, I like to stitch about 3/4 of the way. You really want to make sure you can fit your wrist in here. And so once we get it to a certain point, I pull my hook out a little bit, pull the yarn a little bit longer so as not to frog the work accidentally. And then I get my polyfill and we're going to start to stuff. Okay, so I just use standard original polyfill. It's hypoallergenic. It works really well for the pillows. My pillows tend to be more of an irregular shape, also makes them a little more universal for people who maybe stitch a little bit differently. So I don't use pillow forms, which is why it's important to have really tight stitching. And so what we're going to do is we're going to just take our polyfill and we're just going to stuff. And I like to work all the way into the farthest side and farthest corner. And that allows me to stuff my pillows a little bit better. Now, honestly, you are going to need more fluff than you think you're going to need. So even for a small pillow like this, you will probably need about a pound of fluff, if not a little less. So just plan ahead, make sure you have enough stuffing to get you by. I use a really large box because I make a lot of these pillows. You probably don't need as large of a box. A small bag should be fine, but not the smallest bag. There's like a medium-sized bag that you want. Okay, so what we're doing now is we're just starting to close back up our pillow after it's been stuffed to a pretty firm place. Now once you get it mostly full, you're going to want to work into the corners closest to you. So I like to stitch and then get it really, really close and do more fluff. Now, I was just showing there we're working the last 3 corners, the last 3 stitches into our final corner and sealing it up. And then we're going to tie off our pillow and we're going to weave in our end. Okay, so we've stuffed our pillow, we've closed it up. There is a final step to stuffing, which is actually kind of fun. And this is where you get to take out any anger or aggression you may have and you want to feel really happy. So you take your pillow and you're just going to whack it on anything you want. I'm going to use my knees here, and you just use that to flatten out a little bit of the stuffing, which I know seems crazy and funny. And then after we're done giving it a little whack, we give it a little massage. And that just works out any lumps that you might have and keeps it nice and straight. So here it is, nice and straight. And there's our finished product. So this is our hooker pillow, and this is done with just a simple closing single crochet for our edging. There are some options for you though. If you're a little bit more of an advanced crocheter or you want to stretch your skills, look on YouTube for things like scalloped edging or shell edging or even bobble edging. And you can actually incorporate those in every stitch that we've done along this closure. And that's going to give it like a little ruffled edging. So in the pattern that you're going to get for this class, you'll notice the one I have from that pattern has a little bit of a scalloped edge. And that's where you would work a few double crochets, skip one, a few double crochets, skip one, and that would create a little scalloped edging. So it's totally optional to do edging. I'm going to leave this one plain for this purpose, but you can do kind of anything you want to customize your own pillow. I hope you had a lot of fun. You can find me on Instagram and TikTok. My accounts will be listed here in the class, and I hope to see you soon. If you have any questions, always feel free to message me. I'm happy to answer those for you, and happy hooking!